I'm gonna be real. I don't really know how this video is gonna go, but I'm filming it anyway. Hello, my good people of YouTube. I am here to show you a presentation of mine because I thought this would be an interesting way to talk about the end of Big Brother 27. It is a thought experiment where I generated the season 100 times. And I want to show you my findings. So what exactly did I do?
Let's start there.
I ran Big Brother 27 100 times through this website called Brandsteel, where I was able to set subjective stats for each one of the contestants. What qualifies me to do this? Because I think it's important to establish my ethos. And I'll have you know that I've seen just about every episode of coverage that RHAP has had on this current season, including all of the live feed updates for the season. So if you do not like my opinions, blame Taryn Armstrong, not me. You might be asking yourself, what is a Brandsteel? And you may recognize this website that I am showing right here. That is brandsteel.com. Honestly, I think back in the day, it was popular for its Hunger Games simulation. It's fun the first couple of times that you do it, but really what I love is its Big Brother and Survivor simulations. I think that's where it thrives personally. What's that? You want me to elaborate because you still don't really understand what I'm doing? Basically, I picked the Big Brother simulation on the Brandsteel, and I put all of the contestants of Big Brother 27 on it. I made it a cast of 17, I did a jury of 7, and I made sure that all of their relationships were set to neutral, so it was like strangers coming into the house every 100 times. And all I really did was establish their stats as far as like their strategic prowess and their comp abilities and whatnot. This is what it looks like. And these are what the stats end up looking like. I don't know how well you can see it, but you know, we'll live. You'll live. You'll just have to take my word for it if you can't read the screen very well. But basically, you can set up what their comp abilities look like. There's a general category, a physical, endurance, and a mental category. General is kind of the most confusing. I feel like the other three are pretty self-explanatory, but okay. This probably isn't like universal knowledge, but this is what Corey Wurtenberger has determined on his streams because he does a lot of Brandsteels. And the kind of determination of what general means is less about like the average of all these three categories, and it's more like how good are you at carnival games. And so that's what I consider general to be. And then the second half, we have a couple of different attributes. We have strategic ability, loyalty level, social skills, and temperament. Strategic ability is about what you think it is. It ranges from mastermind to terrible. Loyalty level, are you unbreakable to the people that you're with, or are you a backstabber? Social skills, social butterfly versus house pariah. And temperament is kind of an interesting category to me. The way that the Brandsteel classifies it is that you could be always calm, usually calm, average, easily angered, or extreme rage, which I don't love the extreme rage aspect, but sometimes it's necessary depending on the house guest. And basically the way that I look at temperament is how likely are they to get in a fight, and also how like emotional they are. So I think about how likely they are to get into arguments with other house guests, as well as how likely are they to just kind of break down. So it could be like their temperament just like on the inside, like they're not really going after other people, but they might still be a little volatile, like, to themselves. So I keep that in mind as well when I think about temperament. Now, let's review some math, because I'm going to assume that not everyone had the opportunity to teach 7th grade pre-algebra for 3 months like I did. So you might not be as familiar with some statistics as I am. So I'm going to give you a brief math lesson. We have mean, which means like the average score. It is where you take all of the numbers, you add them up, and then you divide it by the amount of numbers that there are. And so since I simulated this 100 times, I add up all of their placements and then I divide by 100. Pretty simple. We have medium, which is like essentially the middle score. So you line up all of the numbers and you find the number that is right in the center. So like you could have an average score of like 50, but what if every single like score that you had was either like 1 or 100? So essentially what the medium is like saying is it's the middle score.
I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but it makes sense to me.
And then you have the mode, which is basically like the most likely. It's the number that shows up the most. So just wanted to give you a little statistic lesson before we move forward, just in case you needed to know. Now let's see how the contestants did from worst to best. Right now, I am ranking them in terms of their average placement. So take that as you want. Also, all of these scores are very objective. I didn't choose how to rank these house guests. I simply gave them a stat in the Brandt deal, and I let the Brandt deal decide what it wanted to do. So don't yell at me in the comments because your favorite is in 12th place. It's not me, it's the Brandt deal. If I was doing this, Rachel Riley would be #1. So this is not a subjective ranking. It's very objective. Also, I did not think too hard about how to rate these players in terms of their stats. So don't yell at me if you disagree. I didn't think that hard about it. I might even disagree with myself going back and looking at these. Also, don't double check my math. I did this once and I didn't double check it. I'm sure I got some things wrong, and that's okay. So coming in number 17, we've got Riley, which this was a pleasant surprise for me, if I'm being honest, because he probably is my least favorite house guest of this season. So I was happy to see that he did so poorly in the Brandt deal. It is a little surprising because I feel like in the season, you kind of thought that he would go pretty far. Like he was kind of not in danger until like Rachel put him up. Like he was kind of beloved. So this is a little surprising to me, but I don't mind. So his actual placement was 12th place, and he is ranked number 17 in my little thought experiment. His average placement overall was 10.35, and these are the stats that I gave him. I considered him great at the general comps. I felt like he did pretty well at like the carnival games. He won a blockbuster, you know, like he's doing okay. I gave him great for physical as well. He won the balance beam comp, and so I'd say like the stuff that he was best at was probably the things that had a physical edge. And then I gave him average for endurance and mental. Endurance, I don't think we saw him do any, and so I don't really feel like I just kind of gave him an average. I don't know. That's the default for me. And then mental, I don't know. I gave him average. I guess like the blockbuster he won was like kind of like a puzzle, so
I don't know.
And then for the other abilities, I gave him a terrible strategic ability because he really didn't know what he was doing. I gave him trustworthy for loyalty, though I'm not quite sure what to put him there because I feel like he was trustworthy to Catherine, but like a backstabber to everyone else. Unfortunately, I gave him great social skills because for whatever reason, despite the fact that he did not really talk to anyone, everyone loved him in that house. So I felt like I had to give him great there. And then I gave him easily angered for his temperament. I would have put him at extreme rage if I'm being quite honest, because when he does show anger, it's like really scary. But in my mind, the way I saw it was like he wasn't really showing it to the other house guests very much. And so I felt like extreme rage wasn't like proper for him. But I did put him at easily angered because I felt like when he did get angry, it was like kind of a explosion. Here's the graph dictating how he did throughout the season. As you can see, his higher scores are in like the 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th area right here. And then as we get into jury, he's much less likely to place there. 8th place seems to be his lowest score. Honestly, when he gets into jury, it seems like he's more likely to make it to the top 3. So that's kind of my assertions with this graph. So just some things to note. So as I said, his average placement was 10.35, his median placement was 11th, and his mode was 16th, where he placed that 13% of the time. He won twice in this simulation, and he was in the final 2 9 times, making his percent chance of winning when he's in the final 2 being 22.2%. He made jury 39% of the time, and if he had gotten to the jury, he made the final 2 23.1% of the time. This is a graph showing the percent chance of where he could place every possible time. And so my idea is like, you know, everyone has a 100% chance of getting to at least 17th place because there's 17 house guests. And then as we move forward, their percentages gets less and less. And so 16th is all the times that he's made 16th or higher, all the times he's made 15th place or higher, and so on and so forth. And so you can see in the graph, it really does dip after 16th place, and it kind of just like dips slowly until we get to about 8th place, where it's kind of steady until we reach the top 3. So 8th place seems to be where his sweet spot, where he can kind of coast until we get to the top 3. That's my assertion. In 16th place, we have Lauren. Honestly, this surprised me a lot. And you'll understand why when we get into her actual statistics. But in comparison, she got 16th. Very surprising. Her actual placement was obviously 6th place. Her average placement in this thought experiment was 9.85. The stats that I gave her, I pretty much gave her great in every single comp ability. She was just very good at comps overall. She was good at the mental comps, she was good at the physical portions. You know, she stuck up on the wall for a pretty solid amount of time, so I gave her great for endurance. So I think overall, very strong comp ability from Lauren. And then as far as the other attributes, I gave her average for strategic ability. In a way, I think you could say decent, but I think her knowledge of the game helps her out a lot. She's just a little too timid to do the things that she knows she needs to do, if that makes sense. I gave her unbreakable as far as loyalty goes because she should have cut Vince off far before Morgan was able to get her out. I gave her average social skills, mostly because I think the people that she jived with, they really liked her. Like, she was likable for the people that she talked to. But her issue was there was too many people that she was just not willing to talk to. Like she was scared of them, which is pathetic. So I think overall, it averages out to an average social score, in my opinion. And then for temperament, I gave her always calm, and that is because she would not fight any of these people. I think in 100 simulations, she doesn't get into one fight. And these are her stats, and so this is where I'll interpret her data a little bit more. As you can see, her top placement was definitely first place, which makes you question why in her average score, she ranked 16th of all of the other house guests. And that's because she went home pre-jury a lot of the time. And so, as you can see, when we're getting into the jury portion, she does not place here very much. And that's because when she made jury, she often won.
Fascinating.
So her average placement was 9.85. Her medium placement was 12th place. And her mode was first place with 12% of the time. She won 12 times, and she was in the final 15 times, making her win percentage 80%, which is kind of an insane stat. But what's an even more insane stat is this one. Percentage that she would have of making the final two while in jury was 37.5% of the time. Nearly 40% of the time that she made jury, she was in the final two. Which, when you look at it compared to all the others, that one is an insane stat, I'm not gonna lie. She only made the jury 40% of the time though. I don't know. I feel as though the simulation saw her as a big threat, maybe because of her comp abilities, and so maybe she was just often ousted, especially since her social skills were only at average. I don't know. But then because when she made jury, it kind of like really helped boost her win in equity. That's what I think. Her percentage I find pretty interesting because clearly once we reach jury, it's not too dissimilar to when we reach first place. And so this is really where her danger zone is pre-jury. Which again, I don't think was the case at all when we were in the house. She felt very safe pre-jury, but
I guess the cookie can crumble any which way you want.
At any time. I don't know. Next up, we have Vince. Again, I was really surprised that he ranked 15th in this simulation.
He did not do very well.
As we know, his actual placement was second place, and his average was 9.66. The stats that I gave him, he was pretty strong in terms of comps, but I think really where he really shined was endurance. I gave him a beast for that because, I mean, there was really just 2 endurance comps and he won both of them. So I feel like that was fair. I also gave him great for just general comps, but then I did give him average for both physical and mental comps because I think, you know, he wasn't horrible at them, but I think his strength really came from the kind of just random skills as well as the endurance comps. For his other abilities, I gave him average for strategic ability. I think he was better than most people in the house, if only because he actually knew the show, but he did not make optimal decisions at all. So I don't feel like I can call him great. Frankly, I feel like you could say that he's just decent. But again, I felt like in comparison to a lot of the other people there, I wanted to give him the average. I gave him untrustworthy in terms of loyalty because he's a flip-flopper if I've ever seen one. But I do think he's relatively loyal to the people that he really wants. And by that, I mean Morgan. I gave him great social skills because it did seem like a lot of the people in the house liked him. And I don't know. To each their own, I guess. And then I gave him easily angered because he regularly had breakdowns about how he was doing in the house. He wasn't really getting into arguments because he seems like someone who is extremely afraid of conflict. But breakdowns, yes, he absolutely had. Here's his overall breakdown. honestly, it's pretty scattered across the board. He's got like some danger points, I guess you could say, but his win equity is not horrible. So as I said, his average placement was 9.66, his medium was 10, and his mode was 13th and 17th place, where he placed that 9% of the time. He did win 6 times, and he got to the final 2 11 times, making his win percentage to be 54.5% of the time, which unfortunately for Vince was not in his favor during the actual show. He made jury 46% of the time, and he'd make the final 2 while in jury 23.9% of the time. I feel like this is pretty representative of the show because it's almost as if he has a lot of danger points, and on the show, he just happened to mitigate all of those danger points.
But I feel like there was a lot of chances that you could have sniped him out.
Here's his percentage run. It seems to dip specifically right at 6th place. Otherwise, it's a pretty steady go right there. Next up, we have Ava, who did surprisingly horrible in this simulation. Or maybe not surprisingly, depending on who you ask. So her actual placement was 4th place. Her ranking here is 14th place, and her average placement was 9.46. As far as the stats that I gave her, I said that she was pretty horrible at the comps, which I think was pretty accurate. I gave her terrible for her physical ability, which I don't think anyone would disagree with. I don't think she would disagree with. And I gave her decent for both general and endurance, because I don't think she's set to be someone who could never win, but I think it's very unlikely. I did give her average for mental because she did win 1 HOH comp. It's not like she beasted out that comp, but she did win it. I gave her decent strategic ability. I feel like when she tried, she was actually pretty good with the strategy portion of the game, but she did not try very much. I don't think she has much motivation to be strategic, in my opinion. I said that she was trustworthy because I do think that with the people that she was with, she was pretty strongly with them. I gave her social butterfly as far as her social skills because she was kind of beloved in the house, and I think that it was her social game that kept her in as long as she did. And I gave her easily angered for her temperament because there were quite a few times that she'd kind of explode on people. I'm thinking specifically that veto moment with Keanu, like, you have a prompt. I think that's fair. Here's the breakdown of all of her placements. Clearly what she has going for her the least is her win equity. Otherwise, she kind of middles a lot. She often doesn't go home first, but she seems to have some danger points with 15th and 8th place. 15th place was her mode, placing it 11% of the time. Her median was 9.5, and her average score was 9.65. She won only once, and it was against Kelly. So take that as you want. She was in the final 6 times, making her win percentage 16.7% of the time, which is pretty bad. She made jury 50% of the time, and she made the final 2 while she was in jury 12% of the time. So I think it's safe to say for Ava, she was very much just in the middle. Didn't really have much of a chance to win or to get to the final 2. Here's her percentage breakdown. Kind of drops off right around 7th place, I'd say. And up next we have Kelly, who is my nemesis. It's because I should have been cast over her. But I guess let's see how Kelly did. As we know, her actual placement was 7th place. Her average was 9.36, and she ranks 13th overall in my simulations. As far as her stats, I gave her pretty decent comp stats. I gave her great for general, and I gave her beast for mental, because I think those were the two places where she really shined in terms of comps. I mean, the blockbuster and that one veto that she won by herself, I think it's mental in general, and she did well with those. I did give her average for physical and endurance. She did pretty decently on the wall, so I feel like average was a good enough placement for her. I gave her terrible strategic skills because what was this girl doing? I made her a backstabber because, again, what was this girl doing? I feel like she had no loyalties to anyone. I gave her terrible social skills because, again, what was this girl doing? And I did say that she was usually calm. She'd cry about Rachel a lot, but it's kind of a thing where at the end of the day, she's not about to get into conflict with anyone, even though she says she will. So I feel like I gave her appropriately chaotic stats in terms of the social part of the game. Here is her breakdown graph. Again, win ability, not very high, but she had a decent chance of getting to the final two, so good for her. Otherwise, it seems that 5th place seems to be her happy place. She would make it far decently amount of the time, but she really didn't have much of a chance of winning. 5th place was her mode for 9% of the time. Her medium was 9.5, and her average score was 9.36. She only won once, and just for you to know, that was against Will. She was in the final two 9 times, which makes her winning percentage 11.1%. Pretty abysmal. And I would say that's pretty accurate to real life. I think she was the least likely to win the entire time that we watched the show. And I would imagine in the scenario that she won against Will, it really came down to like comp wins.
That's my opinion.
She made jury 51% of the time, and she would make it to the final two while in jury 17.6% of the time. Here's her percentage breakdown. Again, once we reach like final 4, final 5, it really drops off. Keanu is in 12th place. And I know you Keanu stans probably hate that, but again, this is completely objective.
Don't blame me, blame Brant Steele.
As we know, his actual placement was 5th place. His average score was 9.22, and so he is overall ranked 12th in this simulation of mine. The scores that I gave him, obviously he was a comp beast. I did give him average for endurance because, I don't know, he's a bigger guy. I feel like bigger guys don't typically do super well in endurance. And the way I see it, that one sword one against Vince, I felt like it was his concentration and cockiness that hurt him. And I feel like that's one of the things that you need the most in endurance. So I felt like I couldn't give him a good score in that. But I did give him a beast in both general and in physical, and I did give him a great in mental. As far as his other attributes go, listen, I gave him terrible strategic ability because I think that he made the worst decisions at every possible stage of the game. I gave him trustworthy for loyalty, which may be confusing to some, but I think he was trustworthy to the people that he thought he should be trustworthy. And by that, I mean men. But that's not something that he really understood at the time, at least. I gave him decent social skills because, especially in the beginning, before he was winning anything, people did not like him very much. And I gave him easily angered as far as his temperament. That one was a little confusing for me to try to figure out because I do think he keeps a calm demeanor. And I think you could argue that other people are starting arguments with him. But I think you have to say after a certain point that if this many people are starting arguments with you, how are you contributing to it? Here's his breakdown of placement. As we can see, he does have a pretty high win percentage. And it seems as if his scores tend to be right in this early jury phase right here. He's also at risk during the early portion of the game. His average placement again was 9.22, his medium score was 9.5, and his mode was 1st, 11th, and 17th place, which were all at 9% of the time. And I find this very fitting. You know, he's just as likely to go home first as he is to win. So good for you, Keanu. He won 9 times, and he was in the final 2 15 times, making his win percentage 60% of the time. He made jury 50% of the time, and he made the final 2 while in jury 30% of the time. Here's his percentage breakdown. I'd say it really starts to taper off right in kind of the early jury phase. And next up we have Zay. You know, did not think that he'd go this far. Good for you, Zay. You're really proving the haters wrong here. So Zay, as we know, was the first person out and was in 17th place. His average placement is 9.21, which isn't too far off Keanu's. So he ranks 11th overall. As far as his stats go, I wasn't really sure what to do for his comp abilities. He didn't play in very many comps, but that being said, he didn't win any of the comps that he did play in. I figured I'd give him great for physical because I feel like when push came to shove, when we'd get into the more physical comps, he'd probably do a pretty good job at it. But I gave him average for both general and endurance and decent for mental quiz ability because he did not do well in that blockbuster that he was in. I did give him terrible strategic ability because I don't think he had any idea of what he was doing. And he's said before that he turned to ChatGPT as coaching for going on Big Brother. I did set him to trustworthy because I think he probably would have been very trustworthy to the boys throughout this competition. I set his social skills to decent because he very much isolated the women in the house. And I gave his temperament as average. I feel as though it's actually like usually calm, but on the show, Rachel did set something off in him. So I gave him an average score in temperament. Here's his placements. Weirdly enough, he never got 7th place. I always find it funny when there's like a placement that they never got, because that just seems unlikely. His scores are kind of all over the board, but he seems to mainly be in this late pre-jury area. As I said before, his average placement was 9.21, his median was 9.5, his mode was 14th place, which he got 12% of the time. He did win 17 times and was in the final 2 14 times though. So he had a higher win equity, I think, than other people. He did win 50% of the time that he was in the final 2. He made jury 50% of the time, and then he was able to get to the final 2 after making jury 28% of the time. Here's his percentage breakdown. And up next we have our winner, Ashley, which I think Ashley should be higher up. But I think what this simulation was doing was acknowledging just how good Ashley did at Big Brother, considering the odds that were stacked against her. See, for all of her stats, the simulation gods think that she should be 10th overall. But because she's so good at Big Brother, she was able to make this into 1st place.
You see what I'm saying?
Fighting against the odds. None of us thought she could do it, but she did it. Her average placement was 9.04, and so she's ranked 10th overall. For the stats that I gave her, I feel as though you cannot deny that she was not very good at comps, and so I gave her decent abilities for general, physical, and endurance. I did give her an average score in the mental quiz because I think that was her strongest suit, but she clearly didn't win very many of them, so I didn't feel like I could really give her a great. For her other abilities, I gave her great strategic ability. I do think she was probably the strongest strategic player on the cast. I gave her average loyalty. I think she's really just loyal to herself, but the people that she really vibed with, like Rachel and Will, she'd be willing to keep with. But I think if she needed to cut someone, she would, you know? I gave her average social skills. This one I wasn't quite sure what to do because I do think part of what Ashley was doing was dumbing herself down and kind of intentionally aggravating people socially to like keep her threat level low. So this is kind of my way of balancing that. I think she'd be good socially if she tried that way, but she also kind of plays into the ditzy aspect that I think would annoy people. So that's why I gave her average. And then I gave her usually calm as her temperament. I think overall, if anything, she likes to troll people. Really the only time that she kind of blew up was at Keanu that one time. But I think for the most part, she's got a pretty clear head on her shoulder. She doesn't take what people are doing like all that seriously. It's really just Keanu, which I can't blame her as a woman for getting fed up with him. Here's the breakdown of all of her placements. Again, she did not get 6th place at all during these 100 times, which I just find interesting. I guess that means that, you know, they wouldn't have targeted her during the double at all. Good for her. Her average placement was 9.04, her median was 9, and her mode was 4th place, which was 11% of the time, which also, you know, I think it was very likely that she could have gotten 4th place. I think if you were Vincent Morgan, you probably should have gotten her out over Ava. I think they would have been set to be the top 2 if it was them against Ava in the top 3. She won 4 times, and she was in the final 2 8 times, meaning that her win percentage was 50% of the time. And again, I view this as just her win in real life being all the more impressive because it's very unlikely that she reaches the final 2 to begin with. She made jury 52% of the time, and she would reach the final 2 15.4% of the time when she did. This is her percentage breakdown. Clearly, final 3 on gets really low chance, but once we reach kind of the jury, it's a little more steady. Next up, we have Zach in 9th place. His actual placement was 13th. His average placement was 8.82, and this ranks him 9th overall. For his comp abilities, I wasn't quite sure what to do because he seems like someone who would be very good at comps, and he did win that first day 1 comp, but he didn't win anything else. So I gave him average for general and average for endurance. I did give him great for physical and great for mental because I do think, you know, if he reached that Morgan spot, he probably would have beasted out the competition. That's my opinion. I gave him a decent strategic ability. I think that was probably his weakest area. He really did seem like a pretty solid overall player, but I don't think he made the best decisions. So I gave him decent strategic, but I did give him trustworthy and great social skills. I feel like he was primed to go very far in the game. It really was just his own self that got in the way. And then I gave him always calm. I don't think there's like a part of him that could ever fight anyone in this house, if I'm being honest. This is his placement breakdown. As you can see, 8th place was calling his name throughout the entirety of this simulation. Again, his average placement was 8.82, his median was 8, and his mode was 8, which he got 15% of the time. I guess the simulation really thought that he should have been the second juror. He won 6 times, and he was in the final 2 14 times, making his win percentage 42.9% of the time. Honestly, I was kind of surprised that he didn't win more often. He just seems like a pretty solid guy. But in my head I think he was probably kind of a himbo in these simulations. You know, like he's not really thinking and he ends up bringing the more strategic person to the end with him.
That's what I think.
He made jury 57% of the time, and he would make the final 2 after making jury 24.6% of the time. Here's his percentage breakdown. Obviously, once we reach 8th place, it goes down because he was in 8th place a lot. Up next, we have Amy. And this was probably, after Lauren, the most surprising placement to me, because if I were to tell you who I thought the worst player on BB27 was, I'd probably say it was Amy. I feel like she should be a lot lower on this ranking, but here she is, I guess. Her actual placement was 16th place. She had an average placement of 8.77, and so she is ranked 8th overall. The stats that I gave her, I think, reflect how I think that she did not do very well. So I'm surprised she got this high in the rankings. I gave her decent general ability because I don't really know how she'd do in a carnival game, and I gave her average mental because, I don't know, I didn't want to be rude, but I did give her terrible physical and endurance because I don't think she would have done very well on either of those. I gave her terrible strategic ability because I don't think she knew what she was doing. The fact that she was low-key going against Rachel, I think, was a shame, to be quite honest. I did give her trustworthy loyalty level. You know what? How is she really going to backstab these people? I gave her decent social skills because I think Ashley and Rachel were really her only 2 allies. And I gave her average temperament because she didn't get into fights with people, but she did cry a lot. Here is her placement breakdown. Very middling, I'd say. So her average placement was 8.77. She had a medium of a 9, and her mode was 9th place, which was 14% of the time. Honestly, I think she's ahead of Zach because she was just less likely to be voted off first, which is kind of ironic because she was really close to being voted out first. She won a total of 3 times, which the fact that she won it all was kind of surprising to me. She was in the final 2 10 times, making her win percentage 30% of the time. She made jury 59% of the time, and she made the final 2 while in jury 16.9% of the time. Here's her percentage breakdown. And up next we have Adrian. Adrian has some interesting stats, in my opinion. His actual placement was 15th place, his average placement was 8.75, and he ranked 7th overall. I gave him great comp abilities overall. I mean, the man built a wall comp in his backyard. And he was kind of killing most of the comps, so I just think this was fair. I did give him a decent strategic ability because I think that was one of his weakest areas. I think he was too loyal, which is why I gave him Unbreakable for his loyalty level. Because I think he was too hung up on being the good guy. I gave him decent social skills because I don't think he was connecting with the house very well. And I gave him always calm for his temperament because I don't think he would have fought anyone ever. This is how his placements broke down. As you can see, while he went home pre-jury like a decent amount of times, he won quite a lot. So I think you could say they made the right decision getting him out 15th place. I think it helped prevent an Adrian steamroll at the end. As I said, his average placement was 8.75, his median was 9, and his mode was first place with 13% of the time. He won 13 times, he was in the final 2 18 times, making his win percentage 72.2% of the time. He made jury 54% of the time, and he would make the final 2 while in jury 33.3% of the time. And my microphone has died. So I'm going to try to fix that. Let's see if I charge that up enough in order to finish this video. Here is Adrian's percentage breakdown. And up next, we have Jimmy. I was pretty proud of Jimmy making it this far, I'm not gonna lie. I really did not think he would. But he is ranked 6th overall in my thought experiment. His actual placement was 14th place. His average placement was 8.73. And these are the stats that I gave him. I thought when he was on the show, he showed pretty decent comp abilities. So I did give him great for both general and mental. And I gave him average for physical and endurance. I think he would have been pretty solid all around. Honestly, I probably should have given him great for physical as well. But it is what it is. I gave him average strategic ability because I think he did okay. He had some really sore spots, but was also better than some other people. He was at least active. I set him to untrustworthy because we didn't really get to see him backstab anyone, but I do think he would have been willing to do so if the moment struck right. I mean, you got this man wearing a bunch of snake jewelry. I'd imagine that he'd be okay with snaking someone. I gave him great social skills because at the very least, I think at the beginning, he was able to get a lot of people to warm up on him. Whether or not that stayed is a different story, but I think there's something to be said about being like the social butterfly for the first 2 weeks of the game. And then I gave him easily angered as his temperament because he was willing to fight anyone around him. But I think he did it in a pretty jovial way. Here is how his placements broke down. As you can see, this early pre-jury is very much his sweet spot. He didn't really place much of anything else besides this early pre-jury. His average placement again was 8.73, his median was 9, and his mode was 7th and 9th place, where he reached that placement 15% of the time on each, which is kind of crazy. 30% of the time, he got either 7th or 9th place.
I find that kind of interesting.
He won a total of 3 times, and he was in the final 2 a total of 7 times, making his win percentage 42.9% of the time. He made jury 64% of the time, and he would make the final 2 while in jury 10.9% of the time. And that's because Destiny really wanted him to make 7th or 9th place. Here is his percentage breakdown. As you can see, once we reach 6th place, it goes down a lot. In 5th place, we have Mickey, which this was also pretty surprising to me that she got this far. But I also had a hard time figuring out how to set her stats because she's a very confusing player to me. I set her comp abilities not super great. She won a few blockbusters, or did she only win 2? I think she only won 2 blockbusters, but she didn't really win anything else. So I set her general and her mental to average, but I did set her physical and her endurance to just decent. I don't know. I think that's fair. And then we get into her other attributes which I had a hard time determining because if you had watched the season, you know, she started off very strong and then she spiraled very quickly. And I wasn't quite sure what to do with that. So I set her strategic ability to decent.
Yeah.
I think you could make an argument for average. But I think she's a little too much in her own, up her own butt to be that good strategically, if I'm being honest. I set her loyalty level to untrustworthy because of what she did to Jimmy. I set her social skills to average because I think they started off very strong and then they got really horrible. And so I think altogether that averages out to just average. And then I set her temperament to usually calm because she was kind of calm in like a sociopathic way.
I don't know.
I found this one the most confusing to do, in my opinion. This is how her placements broke down. She very much was solidly in jury for the most part. And given that she did make 10th place, she did get 10th place a lot. As stated before, her average placement was 8.66. Her median placement was 8, and her mode was 10th, which she got 12% of the time. And that's fitting. That's the placement that she got in real life. She won a total of 3 times. She was in the final 2 11 times, making her win percentage 27.3% of the time. She made jury 57% of the time, and she would make it to the final 2 while in jury 19.3% of the time. Here's her percentage breakdown. Really, it doesn't really go down until you reach like the top 5. Yeah. In 4th place, we have Catherine, which I was very surprised with. Frankly, I find Catherine to be the most forgettable person on this season. I often forgot that she was there. And when I would make my rant steals, she was always the last person I would remember. Her actual placement on the show was 11th place. She had an average placement of 8.58, which ranks her 4th place overall. And these are the stats that I gave her. I found it a little difficult to determine what her comp ability was. She won that veto and she did really well on the wall. The veto that she won very much was more of a crapshoot. So I just decided to just give her great for endurance. She did do really well on the wall. I did give her average for the rest of them because I don't necessarily think she flopped, but it's not like an impressive run, you know. I gave her an average strategic ability because I think she would have been a lot better had she not been attached to the hip with Riley. It seemed as if when she was able to detach herself from him, she had decent ideas in terms of strategy, but we didn't see much. So I just gave her average. I gave her loyalty level average because she kind of seems like the person who sticks to the people she's with until she needs to not be. I don't know. You could probably give her trustworthy. I just gave her average. I did give her decent social skills because she would isolate herself a lot from the house. It seemed as if the social skills that was keeping her there was the fact that everyone liked Riley and not necessarily because they cared for her. And I gave her usually calm as her temperament. Really the only time she got in like a fight would have been that thing with Rachel, like the I am sat. Even then, like she was pretty calm. I don't know. Here's her placement breakdown. It's a little all over the place. She got 17th a decent amount of times, but then she also has a good amount of like 4th and 1st, and I think this is 10th place. So she's got some spots, but she got some good spots too. As I said, her average placement was 8.58, her median score was 8.5, and her mode was 4th place at 11% of the time. She won 7 times and was in the final 2 13 times, making her win percentage 53.8% of the time. She made jury 55% of the time, and she would make the final two while in jury 23.6% of the time. Here is her percentage breakdown. And in third place, we have my favorite, Rachel Riley. Honestly, I was really happy that Rachel made it to third place in the rankings. I think it's deserved. I was a little worried that she'd flop, but she never fails me, Rachel Riley. As we know, her actual placement was 9th place. I thought about putting an asterisk there because I don't think that that's really the correct way to say her placement. But that's a whole different story. If you want to know my rant, watch my video of my open letter to the Big Brother production team. Her average placement in my thought experiment was 8.36, ranking her 3rd place overall. As far as her stats go, I was trying to be cognizant that I am considering 40-year-old Rachel and not BB12, BB13 Rachel. So I tried keeping that in mind. I did give her great for general and mental quiz. You might be saying, Hannah, didn't she fail at the hamster wheel? And I say, shh.
That doesn't exist.
I gave her average for physical and endurance because in her heyday, she was a beast. And I would imagine that she's probably better than what I think people would expect a 40-year-old woman to be. So I gave her average. I do think when it comes to endurance, a lot of it is just your willpower. And I think if anyone has a lot of willpower, it's Rachel Riley. But we didn't really get to see how she did in an endurance comp. I gave her a great strategic ability because I think she was really one of the only people in that house that had any idea of what to do strategically. Part of me thought about giving her a mastermind, but listen, I'm Rachel Riley's biggest fan, but I can't give that to her. But in comparison to these other people, maybe. I gave her a trustworthy loyalty level because she is considered a house guest that's pretty loyal to the people that she's actually with, despite her reputation. I gave her average social skills because I think what she was doing should have worked better than what it did. And I think she built herself up in a position where they wanted to hate her. And they didn't. So I gave her average. And then, of course, I did have to give her easily angered for her temperament. One might argue extreme rage, if you just look at it in terms of how likely are you to get in an argument. Because as we know, Rachel Riley is here for our entertainment. She knows what we want to see. But I just set her to easily angered. I think that's fair. Here's how her placements broke down. Really, she was pretty solidly in the late pre-jury stage. And I think that's fair. I think if they hadn't ruined the show and done the hamster wheel, she's very likely to be around here. And listen, I was rooting for her to win, but if she had gotten voted out 5th, 6th, 4th place, I'd live. I'd understand, and I would say that she did a great job because none of us would have expected her to get that far. As I said, her average placement was 8.36, her median score was 7, and her mode was 6th place, which she got 12% of the time. Which I think that's fair. If you looked at the season as a whole, 6th place would have been the double eviction, and that was kind of the spot that I was most worried for Rachel. I did kind of think that they might try to use the double eviction to just finally get her out and not be too scared of her.
What we could have had instead.
She won 8 times and she was in the final 2 11 times, making her win percentage 72.7% of the time. She made jury 56% of the time, and she was in the final 2 while in jury 19.6% of the time. Here's her percentage breakdown. As you can see, once we hit especially the top 3, it really goes down. I feel like that's the spot where they knew she was a threat and they needed to get her out. In second, we have Will. And I was actually pleasantly surprised by how well Will did. And I feel similarly about watching the season. I think Will was kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? I think a lot of the fandom thought Will would be an early out, especially after Kenny from last season. But I think Will proved a lot of us wrong, and he did so also in this simulation of mine. As we know, his actual placement was 8th place, and his average placement in my simulation was 8.19. I did try to be realistic with his comp abilities. I gave him terrible for both physical and endurance. He was injured for the most part while on the show, so I think both of those are very fair. I did give him decent for general, because I think he was more likely to maybe do something if it was like a carnival game. But even then, it wasn't very good. And I gave him average for his mental ability, because I think if he was just standing there, he'd do okay. As far as his other abilities, I gave him average for his strategic ability. He wasn't super active, but he wasn't detrimental to his game. And really, as far as BB27 goes, that's as much as you can ask from anyone. I gave him a trustworthy level, and I put him as a social butterfly and always calm. I do think that he had one of the best social games in the house, and he was really just a solid and steady presence in the house. I love Captain Will. He was great. Here is how his placements broke down. He got a lot of second places, and he got a lot of, 7th place. Was usually pretty solidly in jury, but he just didn't have much win equity. I think that was his biggest problem in this simulation. His average placement was 8.19, his medium was 7.5, and his mode was 7th place, which he got 12% of the time. He won 3 times and was in the final 2 14 times, making his win percentage 21.4% of the time. He made jury 64% of the time, and he'd get to the final 2 while in jury 21.9% of the time. Here's his percentage breakdown. Was pretty solidly made it past pre-jury, I'd say. And number 1, of course, we have Miss Morgod herself. Listen, I think Ashley is a better player than Morgan, like strategically, but man, this house was made for Morgan. She was the winner in this simulation's eyes. Her average placement was 8.05, which ranks her 1st overall in my simulation. I clearly gave her some pretty great stats as far as comps. I said she was a beast in general, and then I gave her great for physical, endurance, and mental. As far as her other attributes go, I gave her great strategic ability because I think she's a very active player and she's willing to manipulate and get in people's minds, you know. I gave her an average loyalty score because I think she's willing to cut people when she needs to. I mean, she was going to cut Vinny in the final 2 if she were to have won the final HOH. I gave her an average social score because she is a little chaotic. I think it's in a fun way, but I could see why that could possibly rub some people the wrong way. And then I gave her an average score as far as temperament because, again, she's a little chaotic. But it didn't really fester as something. I guess she would fight with Vinny a lot. But I just gave her average. Here's her placement breakdown. She did not get out pre-jury very much. She did, it was usually in 10th place, which is right before jury, and then otherwise she's pretty solidly in the jury portion right here. So her average placement was 8.05, her median was 8, and her mode was 10th place, which was 13% of the time, but pretty closely after that was 1st place. She won 12 times and was in the final 2 15 times, making her win percentage 80% of the time. Also, I will say, of those 3 times that she didn't win when she was in the final 2, 2 of them were against Lauren, which I thought was kind of funny. I love Morgan, but I just think that's kind of funny. She made jury 56% of the time, and she made it to the final 2 while in jury 26.8% of the time. And here is her percentage breakdown. Now, I have a bunch of random stuff to go through, and this is the part where I started to get unhinged. And you might be asking yourself, Hannah, was this first part not unhinged to you? And I'd say this first part was pretty par for the course for me. But then I got really into just finding more rankings. So we'll see if this makes sense to any of you. But just know that I just really like math. So anyway, here are them ranked by their average placements again. This was just the same order that I had gone through to begin with. And then here I've ranked them in terms of their percent chance of making jury. Will and Jimmy have the highest percent chance of making jury, which is at 64%. And I have Riley, Lauren, and Vince as the 3 less likely to make jury. They're the only 3 that are under 50%. I also find this ranking funny because for the top 5, we have Will, Jimmy, Amy, Mickey, and Zach. And 4 of the top 5 didn't make jury in real life. Kind of funny when you think about it. So here's their percent chance of making the final 2 while in jury. Lauren has the highest percent chance, it's at 37.5% of the time, followed by Adrian at 33.3% and Keanu at 30% of the time. I think those all make sense. They're kind of like the people most likely to comp their way out to the end, in my opinion. And then Jimmy is the least likely to make the final 2 while he's in jury at 10.9% of the time, followed by Ava and Ashley. This is their percent chance of winning while they're in the final 2. At the highest, we have both Morgan and Lauren. And they had like exact stats, I think, where they won 12 times and they were in the final 2 15 times. So technically they are both first place in here. But I put Morgan higher because her overall stats were better. Everyone else, if they had the same percentage, I looked to see how many times they won. And if I, like here, Zay and Ashley both have 50%. Zay won more times than Ashley, so I have him ranked higher, if that makes sense. But Morgan and Lauren have the highest win percentage at 80, followed by Rachel at 72.7, followed by Adrian at 72.2. The lowest percent chance of winning is Kelly at 11.1% of the time, followed by Ava at 16.7% of the time, and Will at 21.4% of the time. Now, this comes the really unhinged part. I looked at all of their percentage scores and I determined who was more likely to make it to certain placements. So this is them ranked by their percent chance of making the top 16. Rachel has the highest chance at 99%, and Zach has the lowest chance at 90%. And if you really want to know, you can pause these and read them for yourself. But I don't think this would be very interesting if I just read all of this off myself. So here's the top 15. Rachel stays at number 1 at 95% of the time, making the top 15. And Riley ends up as the least likely to make the top 15 at 79% of the time. I also have little things that indicate if they went higher or lower on the list. See here, Catherine's ranking went up 6 points. This is what I spent the majority of my time doing yesterday. I think I spent a solid 5 hours doing this, I'm not gonna lie. This is their percent chance of making the top 14. Morgan comes up to first place at 89% of the time, and Riley stays at 17th at 72% of the time. For the top 13, Morgan stays at 85% of the time, and Lauren goes down to the least likely to make the top 13 at 67% of the time. For the top 12, Morgan stays at number 1 at 79% of the time, and Riley goes back down as the least likely at 56% of the time. For the top 11, Will now goes up and is the most likely to make the top 11 at 75% of the time, and Lauren goes back down to the least likely at 49% of the time. For the top 10, Morgan goes back up and makes the top 10 69% of the time. And Lauren stays at the lowest percent chance at 42% of the time. For the top 9, and now this is the making jury stage, Jimmy is the most likely and goes up to number 1 at 64% of the time, and Riley goes back down to the least likely to make jury at 39% of the time. For the top 8, Will goes back up and he is number 1 and makes the top 8 57% of the time, and Riley is the least likely to make the top 8 at 33% of the time. Will is the most likely to make the top 7 at 50% of the time, and Lauren is the least likely to make the top 7 at 31% of the time. Rachel then becomes the most likely to make the top 6 at 46% of the time, and Riley is the least likely to make the top 6 at 28% of the time. Catherine then becomes the most likely to make the top 5 at 37% of the time, and Riley becomes the least at 23% of the time. Adrian then boosts up and becomes the most likely to make the top 4 at 32% of the time, and Kelly is the least likely to make the top 4 at 17% of the time. For the top 3, it is once again Adrian who is the most likely to make the top 3 at 26% of the time, and Ava becomes the least likely to make the top 3 at 12% of the time. Adrian becomes the most likely to make the top 2 at 18% of the time, and Ava is the least likely to make the top 2 at 6% of the time. And then as far as the win percentage is, Adrian is number 1 at 13% of the time, followed closely by Morgan and Lauren, who both win 12% of the time. And then we have the least likely to win being Ava and Kelly at 1% of the time. So the average of all of these percents, because I think this is an interesting thought experiment. So basically I went through and averaged out their placement on each one of these percents of making the top whatever. And what I determined is that Morgan had the highest rating, followed by Will, Rachel, Catherine, Mickey, which I guess is the same thing as like my average placements, but this is a little different, you know. And then following the bottom, I have Riley, Vince, Ava, and then Lauren. And this helped boost Lauren up because she did have a much higher percent chance towards like the end game, you know.
Just wait.
So then I thought to myself, like, could I re-simulate like the game, but I cut off like the last placed person on all of these percentage lists. So like this becomes a game of Big Brother just based off of their percent chance of making it to the next stage. Follow me. And so in this simulation, so here's like the percent chance of making the top 16. Since Zach was in last place, he got eliminated as the 17th person. Does that make sense? So now let's move forward. So Zach is already eliminated. So when we're looking at like the top 15, his name's already crossed out because he was already eliminated. So now we're gonna eliminate the next last place person, and that's Riley. And so then I just kept doing that. So then Keanu goes home.
What did I do?
Anyway, so see, Zach and Riley were already evicted. So then Keanu's the next least likely person. So then he gets evicted next. So then it's Keanu, and then Lauren goes home, and then Vince goes home, and then Ashley goes home, and then Zay goes home, and then Ava goes home, and then Amy goes home, and then Kelly goes home, and then Jimmy goes home, and then Mickey goes home, and then Rachel goes home in the top 5.
Still better than a dumb hamster wheel.
And then Catherine goes home. So our top 3 is Adrian, Morgan, and Will. And then Will goes home. So that makes our top 2 Adrian and Morgan. So then I determined that Morgan would be the winner, even though Adrian has a higher win percent chance. But what I looked at was like their percent chance of winning while in the final 2, and Morgan had a higher score than Adrian. So in this overall simulation, this would be the boot list. Morgan would be first, then Adrian at second, Will at third, Catherine at fourth, Rachel at 5th, Mickey at 6th, Jimmy at 7th, Kelly at 8th, Amy at 9th, Ava at 10th, Zay at 11th, Ashley at 12th, Vince at 13th, Lauren at 14th, Riley at 15th, Keanu at 16th, and Zach at 17th place. So I thought this was an interesting thought experiment as well. So then I thought to myself, like, I wonder what the average of everything would be, including their actual placements of the show. So I averaged out their placement, their actual placement, their boot list placement, their average percent placement, and their average placement. This is where I'm guessing I'm losing people. But if you're curious, this was the rating. And so we go Morgan, Will, Rachel, Catherine, Mickey, Adrian, Ashley, Jimmy, Amy, Kelly, Ava, Keanu, Vince, Zach, Lauren, Zay, Riley. So this is objectively the correct boot list of Big Brother 27. So I guess I'm done now. I'm sorry if I lost you at a certain point here, but I felt like I needed to cover it all because I spent hours on this presentation. I don't know, it's no joke, kids. So anyway, I hope you learned more about statistics, or at least my version of statistics. I've never taken a statistics class. This is really just a me. I'm sure that it's a more sophisticated way to do this, but what fun is that? So anyway, I hope you enjoyed, and bye.